Oh, this feels good. Guys, I gotta tell you, man, I've been waiting for this for a while. The Skidmarks are back! My favorite NFL punching bag. Outside of course, Bears football. The Cleveland Browns. And oh man, this is what happens when you do something really stupid. This is what happens when you make a really, really stupid move. This is what happens when you sell your soul to try and win a championship because you're dumb and desperate. Karma comes to collect and leave skid marks all down your backs of your jerseys. Woo! The big news, of course, today in the NFL is that Deshaun Watson has shoulder injuries, ankle injury, strained fallopian tubes, who knows, ruptured vulva, who the fuck knows. Either way, point being, he's out for the year. You're going to say, well, that's not funny. We don't laugh about players getting hurt. One, we're talking about Deshaun Watson. This was destined to not have a happy ending for anyone involved. Except the Houston Texans, perhaps. Two, it's Deshaun Watson. What's so sad about all of this is a few years ago, this was a young man that we were putting up on a pedestal and talking about how much of a role model he was and how great his story was. And then we find out, oh, he's really a scuzzbucket and a piece of crap. Yeah. People like that, you can laugh about them experiencing bad things. You can celebrate them experiencing bad things. This is not just he said something that we disagreed with, that he did something stupid like a DUI or something as bad as that can be, right? Like, this is way beyond the pale. So we should absolutely feel no sympathy or remorse whatsoever. We just shouldn't. But the biggest reason of all to laugh, the Cleveland Browns, the Skidmarks. I understand. I understood at the time in this respect. The Cleveland Browns were desperate to get it right at the quarterback position because they had repeatedly drafted at the position and repeatedly got it wrong. The Tim Couches of the world, right? The freaking Brady Quinns, the Brandon Whedons, the Johnny Manziels, the Baker Mayfields. I mean, they've tried and they've tried and they've tried and blessed their hearts. Tried to sell people at one point in time that Charlie Fry could be the answer. Like, they're desperate. But when you're desperate, you could do really, really dumb things. And I talked about it at the time, how much of a skid marks move this was to sit there and make this trade for Deshaun Watson. Number one, obviously, is you got all the off-the-field allegations and everything else. Why would you want this piece of crap associated with the organization? How would you ever feel good? Even if he does lead you to a championship. Like, do we have no shame, no moral standard? Honestly, as a society, no, we really don't. So I could even kind of forgive that one. You're going to say, whoa. I mean, think about it. It's true, right? It really is. We don't give a fuck. We pretend like we give a fuck. We try to think like we give a fuck. We might selectively outrage over Deshaun Watson, but there are so many other things that are similar or worse in many cases. In terms of business, politics, military shit, you name it, right? That is infinitely worse than Deshaun Watson, as bad as the stuff that he was accused of doing. We don't give a fuck as a society. We just don't. Because we're evil, and it's a fucked up world. But when you talk about this trade, the fucking Skidmarks were desperate to bring in a guy that had just sat out the previous season and knowing full well that when they traded for him, he was going to sit out some, if not most, potentially all of the 2022 season. He missed 11 games. So by the time he would come back and actually play any live football late in 2022, you're talking about a guy that has effectively went almost 2 full seasons without playing quarterback. We're not talking about other positions which have their own complexities, like wide receiver, running back, corner, safety. We're talking about the most important position, not only in football, but in North American professional sports. And he hadn't played it for almost 2 years. So not only did the Browns know that and say, we're in, they said, we're so desperate, we're going to drop Trow, hope to give Deshaun the reach around, and let him fill us up as he sit there and give him 5 years and what was it, $230 million, 100% guaranteed. So no matter what, you're stuck with this fucking contract for 5 years. Like how insanely, massively stupid and desperately dumb do you have to be? Well, of course, we're talking about the Skidmarks. And then to sit there and take a guy that didn't play at all in 2021. I mean, this is how asinine this is getting, right? You take a guy that hadn't played for a full season, and you give up 3 first-round picks and more in order to fucking get him so he can sit on the bench the majority of last season. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, nothing about this seemed like, gee, this feels like a really dumb damn idea. Let's not do that. Not for the Skidmarks. No, no, no. And what's the most asinine thing about all of this, is you look at the price they had to give up last year to trade for him. Giving up 3 first-round picks to bring him in. They're still not out from under that trade from a draft pick standpoint. To trade for the guy that they could have drafted not once, but twice in the 2017 draft. And you're going to say, well, they took Myles Garrett, number 1. Okay, touche, fair point. They had pick 12. They sat there and traded that pick away to the Houston Texans. Got a future first rounder, which was used next year when they took Baker Mayfield at 1, and then that pick was fucking Denzel Ward. Just so that way, 4 or 5 years later, they're giving up 3 first-round picks and giving $230 million guaranteed to bring Deshaun Watson in, so that way he can sit there and barely play last year due to suspension, and then this year be Charmin fucking soft, and every time you turn around, it's this boo-boo, it's this torn vaginal wall, it's that. My fallopian tubes are in knots. I feel no sympathy for the Browns. I know a lot of Browns fans are like, ooh, when they brought him in, right? Like, this felt icky in a variety of different levels. So I don't even want to necessarily shit on them. I mean, you ultimately reap what you sow. And if you're a fan of the Skidmarks, like, you had to know this was coming. This was not going to go well. Well, it could still turn around. Could it really? Is there anything you saw from Deshaun Watson in his limited action last year, his limited action this year, that indicates that he's ever going to live up to that fucking contract, to the price that was paid for him? Hell fucking no. Skidmarks. And what makes it even worse beyond everything else I'm talking about here is the fact that the Browns have a fucking legit defense. They're actually in contention. But they're having to roll the rest of the way with Scrub City at fucking quarterback. And if you're talking about, well, you go into next year and try to get a quarterback, who are they gonna fucking get? They don't have a first round pick. And you're gonna look back on this deal many years from now and say, this is one of the dumbest fucking trades, one of the stupidest ass trades of all time. Almost to the, like, Herschel Walker trade level, although I've always felt that trade was a little overrated in terms of how bad it was for the Vikings and a little overrated in terms of just how truly great it was for the Cowboys. Both can be and are true in that case. Like, I think this deal, is going to quickly surpass what the Colts did in 1990 to move up to the Falcons spot to take Jeff George number one when he was like a second-round talent. They gave up Andre Rice and Chris Hinton. Andre Rice, a forgotten hell of a wide receiver. Chris Hinton, a borderline Hall of Famer, probably should be in. Gave up a fifth-round pick and then the 1991 first-round pick that was turned into the 13th overall selection, which is Mike Pritchard. And he had a solid, not spectacular, but solid NFL career. And that's what the Colts gave up to move up to one to take Jeff George so he could win like 14 starts in 3+ seasons. Like, that is bad. And this Deshaun Watson deal for the Skidmarks is already blowing that shit out of the fucking water, and it's glorious. Leave it to the Skidmarks to take an elite defense. Like, that even really matters in 2023. But hey, like, in different ways you guess you can build your team. If you actually had a high-level quarterback, you could win a championship with the way the Browns are constructed. Except for one problem. They went all in on the wrong fucking quarterback. If that ain't the Cleveland Browns, I don't know what the hell else to tell you. They deserve every fucking bit of this. What a shit show and disaster that has been. It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get uglier. Browns fans, buckle up for the next 3 years for this shit show. Maybe Deshaun Watson will want to try and actually tough it out and play in 2024. He probably won't. First chance he gets a boo-boo, he's going to sit out. Nah, fuck this shit, right? Skidmarks are back, baby! Yeah!